Unitarian Universalism strives to embrace and include all in a diverse, hospitable, joyous, and just, caring, and loving community. Wherever you have come from, whoever you are, whoever you love, you are welcome here. We are glad your path has led you here, and we're glad to have you. Join me in enjoyment of our opening hymn, number 297, The Star of Truth, played by our music director, Renee Brown. Please feel free to sing along, but remember to keep your microphone muted since Zoom lag will prevent our voices from sounding in unison. And I did forget to say, hi, my name is Katie Kingery-Page, a member of your Unitarian Universalist Fellowship.
The star of truth but dimly shines behind the veiling clouds of night, but every searching eye divines some partial glimmer of its light. The certainty for which we crave, no mortal ones can ever know. Uncharted waters we must brave, and face whatever winds may blow. Though for safe harbor we may long, we must not let our courage fail. And though the winds of doubt blow strong, upon the trackless ocean sail. From honest doubt we shall not flee, nor fetter the inquiring mind. For where the hearts of all are free, a truer faith we there shall find.
Many Unitarian Universalist churches and fellowships start their worship service on Sunday morning by lighting a flame inside a chalice. The story of how the flaming chalice became our symbol is an interesting one, and it begins during the Second World War. During that war, many people living in Eastern Europe were in grave danger. Unitarians, Jews, others. A group of Unitarians came together in Boston, Massachusetts to form the Unitarian Service Committee, and their plan was to help the people in danger from the Nazis. The director of the Service Committee was the Unitarian minister Charles Joy. Reverend Joy was in charge of a whole secret group of agents and messengers who worked hard trying to find safe routes for people to escape. Reverend Joy decided it would be helpful if the Service Committee had an official symbol or picture to help identify its members. This new symbol borrowed an old symbol of strength and freedom from Czechoslovakia, a chalice with a flame. What does it mean to have a symbol like this? Well, one thing it means is wherever you see a flaming chalice, you know there are Unitarians and Universalists nearby. Having a symbol also can remind you of what's most important to you, and sometimes a reminder can make a very big difference. As Reverend Johnstone lights our chalice today, I'll read Your Broken Heart by Reverend Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards, and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy, and your passion. Bring your loving, and your courage and conviction. Bring your need for healing, and your powers to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room.
This morning, we are going to welcome new members, and it's been a while because of the circumstances, and so we're so excited to welcome new members today. And I'm going to invite our newest members to briefly introduce themselves. First, John Reese joined us about a year ago, and his wife, Mary Beth Reese, it says Mary, but it's really Mary Beth, joined us this week. So would you introduce yourselves, Mary Beth?
Sure. Mary Beth Reese. John and I were members of UU in the late 80s to the mid 90s, and then just got lazy on Sunday morning. And I'm a retired social worker. I worked at the high school for 18 years. It took 10 years to pass smoking tobacco-free laws here in Manhattan, and that's what I worked on. And I've been on the Human Rights Board and helped with the LGBT discrimination thing more recently.
And John's another entomologist.
Exactly,
Yes.
and John's another. They are dominating.
One of the 6 entomologists that come to that church back in
So, Lauren Clement and Lynn Iwanu also joined this week. Lauren and Lynn.
See, Tom Phillips, entomologies.
You're mute, Lynn.
Sorry. Hi. I'm really excited to be part of this community and looking forward to spending more Saturdays and more time together. I recently retired from Kansas State University, where I had the best job in the world as a faculty member and as the Associate Dean for Architecture, Planning, and Design. So the past many years here in Manhattan have been very productive and very positive for Lauren and for me, and we're excited to be here and getting to know everybody in this community.
And I came from Maine to join Lynn back in 1979, thinking we'd be in Manhattan for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and that was 40 years ago. So Manhattan's been a very good place for us to be professionally. I'm a landscape architect, and I taught for 10 years, and then I went to law school at KU, and I'm a lawyer, registered attorney, but my status is inactive, so that means you really don't want to ask me any legal questions. But I am both an attorney for the left side of my brain and a landscape architect for the right side of my brain. And I'm enjoying working with the Volunstore group now for volunteer work, now that we're retired. The Volunstore is out in Wabunsee County. It's a great art gallery, and we're just having fun with some community service.
Lovely. And finally, Rudy and Mac Benavides joined, and you might recognize them as the parents of Rio. Mac and Rudy.
Yeah, he is napping. So. But yes, we're Mac and Rudy. We joined officially. We've been coming to UU since February, and then the world went wild. So we've been glad to be able to see everybody and have this community, even if it is via Zoom. I work for Kansas Childcare Training Opportunities here in Manhattan. So we help childcare providers get their hours for the state, and I help train courses. And I am bilingual, so I'm the only one who trains the Spanish courses for people across the state as well.
And then I work at K-State, where I teach in the School of Leadership, and I'm working towards my PhD in leadership communication.
Lovely. It's so glad to have all of you. Membership in this congregation is both simple and difficult. It's simple because all that's required is to sign our membership book, which all of them have. It's difficult because that simple act means that you have joined a community that's searching for truth with no guarantees of success. Membership means you're part of a congregation struggling for justice, knowing that the struggle is long and hard. And membership means that you've joined with a people who strive to live in loving relationship with each other. And these are not easy things. Truth is sometimes unwelcome, justice can be slow and painful, and love is the ultimate challenge in each of our lives. Our fellowship holds no set creed that everyone agrees on, but what we do is affirm that we must be tolerant of each other in our varied understandings of the religious life and nurture each other as we take responsibility personally and corporately for the world we live in and the life we lead. So at this time, I'd normally ask, do you, the new members of this congregation, freely accept these duties of membership? And I'll ask that, and also I'll ask you each to unmute in turn and affirm that. Do you, new members of this congregation, freely accept these duties of membership? Mary Beth?
I do.
And Lynn and Lauren?
We do.
We do.
And Mac and Rudy?
We do.
And to the gathered congregation, each new face and each new voice that joins with us brings with them a new set of joys and sorrows, skills and abilities, thoughts and beliefs. And each time a new person is added to this body, the body is changed, and the growth is more than numerical. With each new member, we become a new congregation. So I would normally ask you to affirm them by voice, but today I'm going to ask you to find one of the little reactions that you can poke on, or give us a thumbs up or something. So here's your question. Do you accept these persons into membership, fully aware that as life is constantly changing, so too the nature of this religious body is constantly evolving? So let me hear your let me see your reactions.
Yeah. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very
So
nice.
we accept them fully into our ranks. Joining a congregation is but a beginning. We look forward to becoming a new and more diverse congregation thanks to the presence of each of our members, new and established. Please know that religious congregations aren't perfect. A time may come when the fellowship disappoints you or even breaks your heart. And there may be times when through action or inaction you fail us. But know that the covenant between us offers the hope and miracle of healing as long as we stay in relation with each other. The power of covenant does not go so far as to say it doesn't matter what happened. It does assert, though, the hopeful truth that what is most important is what happens next. You are now a part of us, and we of you, and may our days together be joyous. So now, as we move to breakout rooms to check in with one another, I hope everyone will welcome our new members.
Jonalu?
Yes.
This is Doug. That feature seems to not be on my menu. I don't know what happened to it, but I'm not going to be able to do breakout rooms.
Oh, no.
I'll try to get it resolved by coffee hour, but
Okay.
just not there.
Okay.
Oh, well, this is technology.
Okay. Well, we will go on. Sorry. I do see that people have commented in the chat and done some nice welcomes. So welcome to our new members, and we'll hope Doug gets that issue resolved before coffee hour time.
Entomology rocks. What is
Well,
it?
I had planned to say welcome back from breakout rooms, but really here we are. We are all still here together. Unless if you'd like to go ahead and change the spotlight, we'll keep going. Today, Reverend Jonalu will speak on the healing power of telling the truth. Our story for all ages, Ruthie and the Not So Teeny Tiny Lie by Laura Rankin, gives us a chance to consider why it's sometimes tempting not to tell the truth and just how freeing telling the truth can be.
Hello, and welcome to the Joyful Bookshelf, where books are fun. Subscribe for new books read aloud every week. Ruthie and the Not So Teeny Tiny Lie by Laura Rankin. Ruthie loved tiny things, the tinier the better. Her toys were the teeniest imaginable. She had dinky dinosaurs, itty-bitty trains, ponies no bigger than your pinky, and teddy bears that were barely there. Ruthie loved finding tiny treasures too. At the beach, she searched for the smallest seashells. The flowers she picked were no bigger than fairy wings. She even had an eggshell from a hummingbird. And wherever Ruthie went, she carried some teeny thing in her pocket. One day at school recess, after jump rope and swings, Ruthie took a turn on the twirling bar. When she landed, she saw something in the grass. It was a little box with a teensy window and an even tinier button on top. She couldn't believe her luck. It was a teeny tiny camera. Ruthie looked through its little window. Then she pressed the button on top to take a picture. Click! Just like a real camera. This was absolutely the best thing Ruthie had ever found, and it was hers. Click, click. She tried it out every which way. Say cheese, clouds. Click. Say cheese, little bug. Click. Say cheese, school. Click. Say cheese, Martin. Click. But Martin didn't say cheese. Martin said, "Hey, that's my camera." Ruthie was startled. "No, it's not. It's mine." "Give it to me," said Martin. "It's mine." "It is not. Is too." "No, it's not," shouted Ruthie, and she raced back to class. "What's going on?" asked Mrs. Olson. "Ruthie's got my camera," cried Martin. "I got it for my birthday and I dropped it on the playground." But Ruthie wanted that teeny tiny camera in the worst way. "It's mine," she yelled. "I got it for my birthday." Well, that wasn't true at all. Not one teeny tiny bit. Mrs. Olson looked at Martin. She looked at Ruthie. "Goodness, this is a problem," she said. "The camera can't belong to both of you. I'll keep it safe in my desk drawer for now. Let's talk about it again tomorrow." Ruthie's stomach flip-flopped all the rest of the day. She couldn't remember the answer to 2 + 2. When Mrs. Olson read a story, every word flew straight out the window. The bus ride home took forever. "Hi, Ruthie," said Mama. "How was school?" "Okay," mumbled Ruthie. Dinner was macaroni and cheese, Ruthie's favorite, but she couldn't eat. Not one little bite. "Aren't you feeling well?" asked Papa. "I'm not hungry," she said. At bedtime, Ruthie was close to tears. "What's the matter?" asked Mama. So Ruthie told Mama and Papa the whole story. "What do you think went wrong?" asked Papa. "I said it was my camera," cried Ruthie, "but it's not." "It's going to be okay," said Papa. "You made a mistake and tomorrow you can fix it. I think Mrs. Olson and Martin will understand." But the next morning, Ruthie could barely eat. Maybe Mrs. Olson wouldn't understand. Maybe Ruthie would have to sit in the timeout corner. Maybe Martin would never talk to her again. Maybe no one would ever talk to her again. Not one teeny weeny word. The school bell was about to ring. Ruthie took a deep breath and began the long walk to the front of the room. Mrs. Olson's desk seemed very far away. "Good morning, Ruthie," said Mrs. Olson. "I have something to tell you," said Ruthie in a very small voice. "The camera isn't mine. I didn't get it for my birthday. I found it on the playground." Mrs. Olson didn't make her sit in the timeout corner. She didn't even look mad. Instead, she gave Ruthie a hug and kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for telling the truth," said Mrs. Olson. "That took a lot of courage." "I'm very sorry, Martin," said Ruthie. "It's okay," said Martin. All at once, Ruthie's stomach stopped flip-flopping. She even skipped a little on the way back to her desk. She got the right answer in 3 + 7 in math. After lunch, Mrs. Olson read the funniest story Ruthie had ever heard. And on the short bus ride home, Ruthie realized she didn't miss the teeny tiny camera, not one teeny tiny bit.
If you are proud of this fellowship, become its advocate. If you are concerned for its future, share its message. If its values resonate deeply within you, Give it a measure of your devotion. This fellowship cannot survive without your faith, your confidence, your enthusiasm. Its destiny, the larger hope, rests in your hands. This month, our offering benefits our Helping Hands recipient, the Emergency Center. With our offering, we support families' holiday gifts and needs. I'm sorry, I should have said the emergency shelter. If you prefer instead that your offering go to the fellowship or toward your pledge, please note this at the time you donate. You can donate online today or at any time at uufm.net. During the offertory, please write your joys and concerns in the chat. Rev Jonalu will read what you share. Usually after the service, we post joys and concerns to our UUFM listserv. If you would like your message read today, but not sent on the listserv, please also note this in the chat as we listen to offertory music performed by Renee Brown.
So I didn't really see joys and concerns written in the chat, though a couple of people are noting how much that story fit their own experience. I do want to be sure that everyone is aware that last night Dick Cattell did die at the hospice house where he had been moved on Friday. His family was there with him, and I know that Judy and their children will appreciate whatever support and can be offered from people in the congregation. And Nell Forster notes that her great-granddaughter is home in quarantine since she's been exposed, a 10-year-old bouncing off the walls. And I think that the uptick in cases here locally and across the nation is a matter of great concern to all of us. So though it's hard to be apart, we know that this is the best thing that we can do to keep continuing to be in the best shape that we can be. I'm also reminded that we are in relatively good shape in many ways, even as we manage through the pandemic. And this month, we are paying attention to our guests at the table from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, people who may have much greater difficulties than we have and who we want to support. According to research, climate change will leave many homes in the Marshall Islands uninhabitable by 2050. And this week, our guest is Marshallese climate researcher and UU Service Committee partner, Mark Stagey, who works together with communities in the Marshall Islands to collect data on flood risks and groundwater quality. By involving communities in data collection and decision-making, Mark helps increase Indigenous leadership in climate change research, ensure self-determination for communities, and prolong the habitability of people's homes through adaptation and resource conservation. So here is a clip of Mark speaking about the importance of increased involvement of impacted communities in climate change research and adaptation planning.
That's one of the challenges I'm facing right now, is just the partnerships and the collaborative work that is so important is being constrained. And I think it doesn't have to be that way. I think there's a level of co-authorship and collaboration that is deeper and can be done. But there has been a reluctance. I think people's next published article is writing on the fact that they're leading the work. They can't co-lead. They can't co-author. It doesn't work in that way for them. So, and that's why I really like working with UUSC, because they're kind of free from that those confines. They're not motivated by that ambition. It's much healthier, I think, in terms of a collaborative partnership for our community. And so some of the challenges that I see and being addressed with UUSC's partnership has been, that way that we do our work and what motivates us in the end, and what timelines and restrictions that we are given to do the work. Just being more, I guess, reflective of the local context.
What a powerful reminder to be aware of local knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge. The poet Adrienne Rich gives us these heavy but hopeful lines. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. Has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Perhaps we help reconstitute the world by telling the truth. We've selected 2 brief videos to set the stage for considering the healing power of telling the truth. The first, a reflection on what are the obstacles to taking full responsibility for the truth, and the second, a musical reminder of the freedom we find in lifting up the truth.
What gets in the way of accountability? So many things get in the way of accountability. I think one of the first things is that as a culture, we haven't been socialized to really build the muscle of accountability. Accountability is really hard work. It's not just, oh, right, I did something wrong. I'm just going to say I'm sorry and it's going to be done. We all know those people who do someone tells you, hey, that really hurt me. And they do the, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I did that, it's totally right, you're totally right. That is not accountability. That is actually still about the person, right? Feeling a lot of shame or shame spiraling or trying to make it better. But it's not really saying, oh, I really recognize that I did something that hurt this person, that I had an impact on them. So accountability requires a lot of listening to what is it that this person's trying to tell me that that I did that impacted them. Folks really just want to be seen and heard and understood. And it requires a ton of self-reflection. Like, do I have enough inside of me? Do I got myself enough to know that if someone's telling me that I harmed them, that I hurt them, that I'm not going to fall apart, that I'm not a bad person, you know, all those things that a lot of folks go through when they feel like confronted with something that they've done wrong. And in order to do that, they have to work a lot on themselves to be able to get to the place where they can be accountable.
In my personal experience and like the experience of people I love and care about, it feels like shame gets in the way of accountability. Like shame and all of the things that are the fears underneath shame. So like for me, for example, I feel really terrible when I've done something wrong. Really, really terrible and really afraid of losing belonging. Like that the person's gonna be like, you're terrible. That thing was terrible and you're terrible and you suck and like you're that kind of person now and I don't wanna be around you anymore. So like shame and then fear of loss of belonging, loss of connection, of being judged like everywhere I go. And I think that like in my experience at least that shame separates. Like shame is something that keeps me from other people. Shame is something that I've seen folks like makes them either become super like when I feel ashamed, I become super hyper focused on myself so that I actually can't be accountable to anyone else because I'm so feeling like embarrassed, not wanting to be seen, overwhelmed, guilty, like that it's actually all about me. And that to get to accountability, I actually need to move past shame to actually be able to show up and be like, hey, I'm here to be able to respond to you and not make you have to caretake me in my shame.
What I have seen in people, at least this is the way I have seen this expressed, is that people feel a lot of shame about both being a survivor of violence, but also of being someone who has caused harm. So I think one of the big shifts we're trying to make is really understanding how everyday violence is, how normalized it is, how any one of us could be a survivor of violence and probably is a survivor of violence, and how any one of us can also cause harm. And yet also not just make that kind of a sort of neutral soup in which we all swim, but that there are situations in which the actions that we've taken, the attitudes that we have, need to be addressed in a specific way.
I think we're trained that to admit harm is to admit to being a terrible person. And so I think we flee from accountability. We don't want to face the fact that we've hurt someone. I think mostly in the culture we're trained to avoid it or to protect our intentions or our innocence.
We just have so much practice and rehearsal of doing things in a punitive way, a way that's coming from skepticism rather than abundance or trust, rather than reorienting to what it looks like to bring everyone along with us, knowing that in order to do so, we need to open ourselves up to a lot more nuance and contradiction, that it's not as easy as the sort of Judeo-Christian hegemony or hegemonic idea that there's a right and a wrong, there's the righteous and there's the wrong, and really holding that there's complexity, that we're all fallible, we've all made mistakes, we all cause harm. It's not all to the same degree, it's not all balanced, but that there's a belief that we can heal from that we can hold that.
This is the truth of who I am, and it's taken me my whole life to celebrate. I won't go back. You can give me a number, slap on a label, tell me I won't be welcome at your table, but I won't bow down to the tyrants anymore. This is the truth of where we've been. And it's taken the world till now to take an honest look around. There are lies on the TV, lies in the paper, lies on my phone just grown from the vapor. And I won't be fooled by the liars anymore. This is the truth that we can't ignore. There are more of us than there are of them. There are more of us than there are of them. There are more of us than there are of them. There are more of us than there are of them. And tyrants always fall. Always. We're scattered and scared in the ship's dark hold, but we have a common peril and we have a common goal. The parents are dead, the leering uncles at the prow. There is no one left, we are the grown-ups now. Think of all those times we've been down and dissed. We are made of strong stuff, we are made for this. And tyrants always fall. Always. This is the truth we've always known. There isn't a lightning bolt to set things right, to bring us home. It's gonna take all our courage, take all our actions, take every heart in every single faction. And it's gonna take time, some of us won't live that long. When one gets weak, it means it's your turn to be strong. Tyrants always fall, and they're always. 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 Tyrants always fall, always.
It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Watergate, way back last century, left us with quite a legacy, and that aphorism included. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. What we've learned over and over is that when people lie about what they have done, it makes the problem worse more often than it makes it go away. Yet we have learned to lie. We're taught through experience to lie to maintain our innocence, to lie to represent ourselves as we want to be rather than as we are. We lie to cover up what we're ashamed of and to avoid conflict. We even lie to ourselves so that we don't have to address problems that we wish would simply go away. We lie about ourselves personally and about our families, and we also lie about our social structures and our collective history for many of the same reasons: to maintain our innocence, to represent ourselves as we want to be rather than as we are, to cover up what we're ashamed of, to avoid conflict, and so we don't have to address problems that we wish would simply go away. The mistruth index is high these days. At least public lies are. Stories contradict one another, the passions are high, and no one can back down. We've never seen an election like this one, a refusal to concede based on a total denial of reality. And the astounding thing is how many people have committed to living in that make-believe world. Healing, though, requires telling the truth. As James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. If we are lying about it, misrepresenting, even evading the truth, we're not facing reality and cannot begin to heal. This is true for the circumstances of our everyday life. So many personal and social issues are distorted and compounded by lies about them. Or simply closing our eyes to reality, lies of omission, refusing to name what is going on. Domestic abuse, suicide, sexual assault, racism, mental illness, substance abuse, all made worse by lying. Lying that doesn't help the people caught up in the pain and hurt and actually wounds all of us. We know how lies spin out of control, so we know the danger inherent in it. Yet we keep at it. Why? Perhaps fear of punishment. If you think back to those early lies you may have told, like we heard in the story this morning, the chances are good that you remember saying something like, "I didn't do it," when you know you did. Why does a child make that assertion? Because they're afraid of punishment. And that fear continues through life. Why do kids picked up for vandalism or drugs lie about it? Why did cigarette companies lie about the harmfulness they were causing? Why do oil companies lie about the destructiveness they're causing? Why did President Nixon lie about Watergate? Why did President Clinton lie about Monica Lewinsky? We live in fear a lot, and our culture supports and encourages living in fear. Punishment comes in many forms: spankings, timeouts, going to jail, public humiliation, loss of support and friends, loss of income. One thing I learned from B.F. Skinner back in a previous career: punishment often has unintended side effects. Among those side effects are avoidance, escape, and even increases in aggression. The effectiveness of punishment is greatly limited by the predictable, if unintended, consequences. Still, behaviors too have consequences, and when someone has hurt someone else with their behavior, we as a society have a problem with that. We don't want them to get away with it. We often want to hurt them as much as they have hurt the other person. And sometimes that's even how we think the hurt person will begin to heal. And that's why we human beings created systems of retributive justice. Such systems intended to curb vengeance and be proportionate, still the purpose is punishment. And no wonder under those circumstances that if someone realizes they have been hurtful, that they will lie about it. It's embarrassing they did such a thing. There's huge shame and guilt associated with it. others find out, they may be hurt as much as they have hurt someone else. No wonder so many people, from 5-year-olds who've taken a toy they want to the President of the United States, lie. We as society need to find ways to hold people accountable for their behavior in a way, hopefully, that doesn't create as many incentives for lying, because the cover-up keeps us from being able to deal with the crime. The cover-up keeps us from being able to deal with the hurt and the pain that has been caused. The cover-up keeps us from healing. In 1995, South Africa was in a spot. Having dismantled apartheid and welcomed the once condemned Nelson Mandela to the presidency, they still had a deeply divided nation, racially divided and politically divided. The apartheid government initially refused to cede power unless amnesty was granted. And the Black Africans, long oppressed by apartheid, would not hear of that. They wanted something like the Nuremberg trials that followed World War II. What to do? There needed to be some process to allow healing. After a year-long discussion, nationally and internationally, they turned to the idea of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It wasn't a brand new idea. Uganda, Bolivia, and Argentina had tried a similar approach in the 70s and 80s to deal with division and hurt in their own countries. And Chile first used the name Truth and Reconciliation Committee in 1990. The slogan adopted in South Africa was "Truth, the road to reconciliation." And of course, truth by itself does not bring reconciliation. It is, though, a step along the way. The charge to the TRC was to look into human rights abuses that happened between 1960 and 1984. They were to hear stories from victims, grant amnesty when appropriate, put together the history, draft a reparations policy, and write a final comprehensive report. The South African Commission had 3 separate committees: the Human Rights Violations Committee, the Reparations and Rehabilitation Committee, and the Amnesty Committee. And the commissioners went through a transparent process of nomination and appointment and represented people from various sides. Famously, Archbishop Desmond Tutu served as their chair. And the primary focus was on people who had suffered harm. Tens of thousands of people told their stories in the first person. Anyone from any side could bring a concern to the Human Rights Violations Committee, so it wasn't all about winners and losers. The media broadcast much of the testimony. One Afrikaner, Jan Sneeman, who had been a government official, commented, I remember when we were watching it, and it was for me absolutely shocking to hear what Black people went through when they testified about the killings and all those things that happened. And so the lasting effect was, I think many complained to say didn't go far enough, but I think it was a good start. I think it was a shock to many Afrikaners. And I think to a certain extent it helped in terms of reconciliation. But it's going to take a long time. So the TRC ended up recommending a wide program of reparations, including about $3,500 a year for 6 years to any victims they had identified. And rather than a blanket amnesty, people could apply for amnesty. And the commission ended up granting amnesty in about 849 cases, while refusing almost 5,400 cases. Though many who were refused amnesty were never actually prosecuted, nor have the reparations all come to be. The process, while imperfect, allowed some meeting of minds and hearts. I think it's a bit like an intervention for an alcohol or drug abuser. Here's the chance to hear what the effects of your behavior have been on others. Here's the chance to begin to change your heart and your habits. It's not a trial where you're being penalized or sent away. It's an opportunity for accountability and transformation. South Africa's apartheid period lasted only 50 years, though the centuries-long history of colonialism fed into the policies and practices of that half century. Our own nation's history of colonialism and slavery extends back even further than South Africa's does. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in his influential essay, Case for Reparations, wrote, "What is needed is an airing of family secrets, a settling with old ghosts." And even those with reservations about reparations can grasp the need for an honest airing. Former Bush speechwriter David Frum, arguing against reparations, wrote this: "Americans tell a too flattering version of their national story. They treat slavery as ancillary rather than essential. They forget that the work of slaves paid this country's import bill from the 17th century until 1860. They do not acknowledge that the freedom championed by slave-holding founding fathers, including the author of the Declaration of Independence, included the freedom to own other human beings as property. They can no longer notice how slavery is stitched into every line of the Constitution and was supported by every single early national institution. The self-reckoning we see in Germany and other European countries does not come easily to Americans and is still outright rejected by many." These acknowledgments are indeed an airing of family secrets. My mother and my partner both spent a span of their growing up years in Davis, Oklahoma. The local newspaper, the Davis News, has a regular feature called Thinking of Long Ago, where they include a sentence or a short paragraph of news from different periods of time, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Recently, I read to my mother one of those stories where they were recounting a story from 100 years ago that described an incident where whites had killed several Black people in town. They shouldn't print that kind of thing, my mother said. Many people have the attitude that the intent of thinking of long ago is for nostalgia, not for confronting our failures. Let the past be buried and forgotten if it challenges our sense of self and righteousness. Let us forget how our ancestors moved to Oklahoma, taking land given to the Cherokee, Choctaw, and to many other nations, given when there was no right to give. It was simply taken. Let us forget how my grandfather's farm didn't have a clear title because the land handed out through the Dawes Act still carried a native name on it. Let us forget how white landowners locally in that town were anxious to have a white buyer because the people from the Black town of Tatum's were getting too close. Let us forget our complicity in the racially based wounding of Native people and Black people and immigrant people. And that's what I heard. Let us forget in They Shouldn't Print That Kind of Thing. And what I really mean to say is we need not to forget. We need to listen to voices of those who have been harmed. Around the same time as that incident in Davis, one of the worst riot massacres in our history happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Whites killed hundreds of Black people and burned, robbed, and destroyed Black Wall Street, the Greenwood District, an area so profitable that it had stirred white animosity. All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa has received wide praise for their role in helping to expose the mob action that happened there and to raise funds that have compensated in a small way some of the victims of property loss. And I don't often see mentioned, though, the whole story, the claim that the local newspaper whose publisher was a Unitarian, encouraged the mob to gather and take action. Oddly, that particular newspaper edition entirely disappeared from the archive. That guilt by association may help to stimulate the activism that has arisen in All Souls Church. We have to be clear about why we need to air these truths. Yes, it's about acknowledging harm and doing what can be done to abate that harm. It's about healing for those who have been harmed. It's also about restoring those who have done harm. When we protest our innocence and resist accountability, when we lie, we hurt ourselves deeply. We are not whole people when we live in an alternate reality. We cannot live with ourselves. Until we start telling and believing the truth, we cannot begin to heal. It's time we begin the path to healing and reconciliation, not by papering over or excusing what has come before, not by heaping on punishment, guilt, and shame. It's time we begin the path to healing and reconciliation by telling the truth and listening to the truth. For the good of us all. A young UU of color, Paloma Kahlo, in 2016 said, "Only when we come to bear witness to the cracked and shattered pieces can we begin to heal what has been broken." Yes. As Rachel Lomberg, the UU minister in Kalamazoo, reminds us, in these days of so much uncertainty, may we choose honesty over comfort, love over complacency, and truth over convenience. So may it be. Our closing hymn is number 318, "We Would Be One."
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for the meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Our closing words come from feminist activist and writer L.R. Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go. Love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you.